Hi, my name is Jules, and today I'm going to talk about just a handful of trends. I don't want to say that I'm speaking about any huge trends, because I only have a few examples really, but trends when it comes to the idea of mermaids and secrecy in children's lit. And with that, I also want to tack on a possible queering of these trends. The first example that I have is from a graphic novel called The Girl from the Sea by Ostertag, which was published in 2021. It follows a girl named Morgan as she not only falls in love with a selkie, which is a half-human, half-seal creature, but it's also essentially Ireland's concept of a mermaid. But she also has to deal with the fact that she's gay. Morgan believes that the fact that she is gay is a secret, and she keeps it from everyone in her life, and this is a point of problem in the novel. It's a big conflict, or it's the conflict that Morgan has to deal with, and it causes strain on the relationships around her. Like, in terms of her friends, she describes it as, quote, "They don't know how. For about a year, I've had a secret, and it makes me different from them." What Morgan deals with here may seem very obviously like what's understood at least to be the common coming out experience, or the common experience of being in the closet. And to quote from the Psychiatric Times, "It can be painful to keep significant aspects of the self hidden, or to vigilantly separate aspects of the self from each other. Constant hiding creates difficulties in accurately assessing other people's perceptions of oneself, as well as recognizing one's own strength." And even though this is not really shown in that quote that I read, like specifically her difficulty in assessing other people's perceptions of oneself, she is in pain and vigilantly trying to separate this part of herself from the person that the people around her experience. In terms of the actual coming out process, Morgan is forced out of the closet by her brother, and it is obvious that the reason why she didn't want to come out of the closet was a fear of rejection. And again, to quote the Psychiatric Times, "Years spent in the closet can make the prospect of revealing oneself an emotionally charged experience," as well as the idea that such revelations as coming out of the closet are not always greeted with enthusiasm, and fear of rejection often plays a significant role in a gay person's decision about who to tell and whether to come out. And in the novel, again, Morgan does not want to tell the secret and is forced to do so, which in many cases, and in the case of Morgan, it's a painful experience. She does end up, she gets forced out of the closet by her brother, and she does end up talking to him about it and rebuilding their relationship, but at first it's a quick break, and she's terrified of what other people will think of her. She leaves the house and runs to go seek Kelty, who is the Selkie. But the nice thing is that in the novel, when she does actually come out to her friends, they have a neutral reaction. Say, one of them says, "Did either of you know Morgan was into girls? It's weird she didn't tell us." And so no negative reaction there at all, except to the fact that they feel like they were kept out of a part of Morgan's life. And on the other side, too, when she gets back to her house, her mom comforts her and says, like, "Who you love is a good thing, Morgan. It's never a burden on other people," which causes Morgan to cry tears of relief. Really quick, I just want to talk about morality of secrets, and specifically in this text, Kerry Mallan, in her book Secrets, Lies, and Children's Fiction, argues that when secrets do come up in children's fiction, they are often for the sake of the character's survival, but telling the truth is always put up as the morally superior option to telling lies or concealing the truth. And in the case of this text, I would say that it's true. And that makes sense, I think, in the context of, like, an explicit coming out story, because in the common experience of coming out and hiding one's queer identity, that coming out is a release. And the person feels more comfortable not only with themselves, but also possibly with the people around them, depending on their reactions, obviously. And she is able, once she comes to terms with the fact that she can be openly queer, she's able to rebuild, or I guess maybe not rebuild, but come closer to her friends again, and also rebuild relationships with her brother, and she gets closer to her mom in the process as well. So I would say that this text puts secrets, or I guess puts the experience of revealing secrets at a morally higher place, but specifically in the case of the queer context, which is interesting. Another text that I wanted to bring in this conversation, even though it is not openly queer, is the first book in the Emily Windsnap series, which is The Tale of Emily Windsnap, which is written by Liz Kessler, and it was published in 2003. And it follows the story of a young girl who suddenly realizes that she's a mermaid. She has to deal with two main secrets in the novel, one being the fact that she's a mermaid, and the other one being the secrets surrounding her parents' relationship, specifically before she was born. In terms of the first secret, which is that Emily has to keep the fact that she's a mermaid from the people around her, she says during swim practice, 5 more minutes and my secret would be revealed. Everybody would know that I was a freak. So she's terrified of the other students in her middle school class thinking that she's different or weird because she desperately wants to fit in. And she comes back to this at the end of the novel, like the same type of wording and sentence structure, where she says, I had 5 minutes to be proud instead of scared, 5 minutes to be free, to be myself. And I do think that there is a queer reading here, especially with the fact that her mermaidness is deeply connected to her as herself, which, as talked about with Morgan, queer identity oftentimes is experienced as like this part of one's person that cannot be removed, cannot be changed. And it's also a place that people often feel fear about showing. And I do think that there is something to be said about mermaids in general having a connection to queerness, or queer people read mermaids as queer often. For example, many trans femmes feel connected to the mermaidness, which is interesting. I think it is also important here that she feels that she must keep the secret from her mother as well, and this is connected with my next point about her uncovering the secret of her parents' relationship. But especially living in close quarters with her mom, and they live on a seaboat, she gets very nervous about her mom suddenly finding out that she is a mermaid too. In terms of the second secret, again, it has to do with her parents' relationship before she was born. At the pretty close to the beginning of the novel, it is pointed out that she never knew her father, and she believes, her and her mother believe, that he left her and her mother when she was born. And once she starts gaining knowledge about mermaid culture and mermaid history, she finds out, like, she hears her father's name, and she finds out that her mother's memory is being erased. And this is a huge part of her identity formation. And the fact that, like, I think there's something to be said about her going out to a place that her mother is not able to go into. Like, she's going deep into the sea, into some ways herself, and learning about her culture and what she was not allowed to have. And I do think that in general, just the idea of learning about one's family history and learning about one's culture, especially if it has been kept from you in different ways, is a significant part of growing up and understanding one's own identity. And I think that's what this second secret really stands for in this novel. With that, though, looking back at Kerry Mallan's point that secrets, if they do exist, are for the sake of the character's survival, but telling the truth is always put up as morally superior, is interesting in this novel, because though I do think that both aspects are present, there's also ways in which telling the truth is not put up morally superior. Emily does, not only is she concerned about this fear that her classmates are going to think that she's a freak, she also mentions being afraid that she is going to be tested on and experimented on by scientists. And I think there's something to be said about being afraid of one's peers, seeing you as a freak since she wouldn't be able to survive middle school. But she does end up showing her classmates her tail at the end, but all of the classmates' memories are erased. Which goes to say that in this specific point, that telling lies is morally superior because it protects Emily on a deeper level than just, like, in the moment it will always protect Emily. It's also interesting in terms of the second secret, because though she is able to uncover everything, and at the end she gets a happy ending. She gets to, her father's in jail. Anyways, he gets out of jail, and she is able to live with her mom and her dad on a remote island, which again, even though they are allowed to live together and she gets a better ending based on telling the truth and coming to terms with these secrets, she still has to keep the secret of her being a mermaid, which again puts it does not put telling the truth at a morally superior position. In conclusion, there are some fun things to look at in the trends between secrecy and mermaids, especially because I feel like people don't talk about secrecy and mermaids, though many mermaid stories have themes of secrecy. And it's also interesting to look at that in the lens of children's literature morality, because as with Emily Windsnap, the secret that she is a mermaid is kept at the end. Even though she gets her happy ending and she gets her creation of identity, she's still, nobody knows that she's a mermaid other than her, like, family, you know? It's very interesting. And with that, it's also interesting to look at that from a queer lens, even if the books are not necessarily explicitly queer, or if they are, like with The Girl from the Sea, because many young trans femmes in particular, but other queer people, feel connected with the stories of mermaids, and maybe it has to do with the way that they are cloaked in secrecy, like they are. Again, thank you so much for listening, and all of these sources and articles that I read from and just read in general will be in the description.